That's kind of the problem in the first world, is that we don't have the luxury of having basic needs, the fulfillment of basic needs as our why, because we already have that. So what you end up with is people who are kind of anxious and depressed and all that stuff because like, why? What do I do? What do I do with my time? Why do I exist? You know, you're confronted with those essential or like deep questions more.
Welcome to the Inspirit podcast from Amoris Christi. Join us as we explore current events and all manner of fascinating topics and explore their connections to Christian living.
Welcome everyone to another episode of the Inspirit podcast. It's a joy today to have with us Father Jose Lopez, priest from the Archdiocese of Miami. No longer a guest. He's part of our family at this point. Thanks, Father, for being with us.
Thank you. It's always a great joy to be in this podcast.
Yeah, thank you. So how's you guys' day been? It's 40 degrees here in Florida. We're enjoying the cold. How are you, Father?
Yeah, I went hiking, so to enjoy a little bit the cold. Actually, it was in the sun. It was normal. Actually, very beautiful. So that's what I did.
Oh,
fun today.
Yeah. Father, how about you? Enjoying the cold?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I had a spiritual direction session outside today.
Nice.
For the first time, yeah.
Usually don't do that, so it's good to know. Well, Father, we've had you here for so many different topics, and it's always been a joy to just pick your brain and just know more about it. And recently, we came across one of this paper that you've written, the Transcendental Vocation and the Civilization Force. Is that correct?
Transcendental Vocation and its Civilizing Force.
Yeah. And
Civilizing Force.
Civilizing Force. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe just, we as we were reading it, all of us thought, how powerful it is and such an important message for all of us to hear. But could you just speak about the Transcendental Force and what it is and what you mean by that as being a civilizing force?
Yes, the whole study began, as you know, I do some anthropological studies and so forth. And one of the things that I found there that was very hopeful is that the first human organizations did not really happen through coercive power. We usually think that is the king kind of gathering a band of people and forcing them to be together and things like that. And in reality, it's not the figure of the king, the one that actually civilizes or the one that actually coalesce a large group of people together.
So just for people who may not be as familiar as you are with anthropology and such, what you're talking about is, if we go as far back in history as we can look, how did human beings start coming together into larger groups, right?
Exactly, into larger groups. The first thing that we have recently discovered is that it wasn't necessarily agriculture per se. We thought like, okay, we discovered agriculture, now you can feed more people gathering one place more. Before agriculture, you already have very large numbers of human beings and even constructing monumental buildings like you can see in Catel-Hoyoc and Göbekli Tepe it's near the beginning of agriculture but is antecedent to it. So you already have big civilizations happening even before really we got the food to sustain it or at least it's not because of the increasing food production. So you have to start asking the question, well, why does these people get together? And especially there is a study called the Dunbar study. It's one of the major, most interesting studies about the human aggregation that basically said that after 120 people, you start associating these people are not your group anymore. Like for mammals, you kind of can understand you are my family or my group, up to 120 people, more or less, maybe 50 for
150 or
150 maximum.
I forget, yeah.
Even Aristotle back in the day also more or less put a number, but there is a limited number, and the limited number is smaller than we thought.
So you're saying that there's the Dunbar study, there's a limit to the amount of relationships you can maintain.
Or close relationships you can maintain. Of friendship and like familiar relationships.
And that number was approximately 150, but now we're saying it
remains the same.
Yeah, because I think like our brains are sort of evolved to be able to deal with that many relationships or people, which tells us that that's probably the number of people that would typically live together. at a certain, for maybe a long stretch of history.
Yeah.
And I do think agriculture played a part in, just like from a physiological point of view, so that if you have too many people in one area, typically what happens is you deplete all the resources.
Yeah.
So if there were 300 of us here in this place and it was just uncivilized, we would start eating all the wild vegetation and wild animals, and very soon it would be completely depleted. So I think agriculture probably helped.
It's interesting enough when you look at it, agriculture comes really right after. It's just the monumental build. The question is for us, at some point we have, what is a civilization? And we have monumental buildings, writings, and so forth. There was a very neat way of describing it. But then when you look back, especially at the 12,000 years point, you realize that it's not that neatly, that these hunter-gatherers are building massive stones, monumental buildings. So, so this neatly understanding of what civilization was, it's a little fuzzy now.
Yeah.
Because you got hunter-gatherers that were not supposed to have the resources and all of that to do this monumental building. Now they have it. Now, still people think that they were maybe these were seasonal places like shrines that were built. But even for that, you have to have a certain amount of order and so forth to be able to even do it.
Yeah.
First, getting together, you have to have a coalescent type of idea, because 5 people cannot build that.
Yeah.
You have to have on the thousands of people to be able to build that. So already you have to have something that actually some value together to be able to do. And also it's a massive amount of work. So you have to have capacity for organization. And these are hunter-gatherers. This is not people with extra time to just dedicate themselves to that.
So kind of trying to understand what you're saying a little bit more is that these people were not just coming together for agricultural reasons, although later on agriculture became a reason, but there's something of a value that they saw and it wasn't necessarily the king, it wasn't necessarily force that brought them together, but there's value, or was there something else as well that brought them together?
And that is the first thing that's why I talk about the Dunbar thing, because even today, how if our brain is designed for 150 people, let's say 200 to keep it, but I know it's not that much. How are we together? Why are we not fighting each other? Also, when you look at primals like monkeys or gorilla packs, when they hit that limit, they separate, and the son may start killing his father because he's from the other group. So that is how basically what you see happening in nature, that mammals, when they hit that, somebody needs to go.
Got it.
Somebody needs to go. They become another group. And if they encounter each other a week later, they will fight to death for resources and so forth. So how did we overcome that? And so one of the theories, the primordial theories, and I do believe in it a lot, is through symbolic association. Symbolic association. Easy to understand it easy. You go to a stadium, there is 10,000 people in that stadium. Half of the stadium, most of will have red hats which says Cardinals. The other half of the stadium, we have a white cap with, LA. When you walk in, you very quickly know who is your pack, according to whatever team you play. So through symbol, now I don't have to have a personal relationship with you. I have a relationship in some sense with the symbol. And so now I know you are one of mine.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I don't care who you are. We never get to know you, but I know because you have that hat, you're one of mine. And I think that's the main theory by which we were able to break from the biological constraint of relationships.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, there are 2 symbols that always make me feel like I'm completely at home, even if I'm in another part of the world. The first is the cross. If I ever see the crucifix or cross or whatever, I'm like, even if you're in a completely foreign land. The second one is the McDonald's M. When I see that, I'm like, I could be anywhere. Finally, I found a place of refuge, But no, I mean, they represent something to you, every symbol. I think that's the idea. And then, but your point is that people can actually connect around a symbol,
exactly.
even though they don't have a prior relationship.
Exactly.
Which is incredible.
Exactly.
And I think also that points to also like we are searching for something more than this 150, right? Because why are we trying to be united in that symbol if we want just that 150 or a number? We want something more than that. So I think that's, it's just fascinating. Yeah.
Exactly.
It is. And, people will assume that human beings must have come together in larger numbers out of necessity, right? Meaning like, okay, hey, we're only 150, but that's not going to make us strong or powerful enough. And so maybe we should assemble in larger numbers so we can have a stronger military. Months ago when Father Jose and I were having conversations about this topic just spontaneously, I was convinced that must have been the case, that people probably came together out of necessity for either organizing resources or like food and such, or for military strength. But he adamantly insisted that, in fact, that's not the case. That's not how people first came together.
No.
People first came together
around religion.
Around
basically.
religion.
Around religion. It's in the archaeological record. Even you can start having the large battles and all of that, military large battles, very late in history. After the Sumerian cities, doesn't mean that people didn't fight and there were not skirmishes, but large organized battles for resources up to the the Sumerian cities. But way before that, you still have large numbers. So large number of people getting together. So you could have had an army. But no, that's not the thing. And also, like, the first constructed building seems to be for religious purposes. The first effects of this large aggregation is not a camp, military camp. It's not a watching tower. It's not necessarily either a large irrigation field. It is a symbolic religious construction.
And when we say religion, are we? We're not necessarily talking about a set of beliefs.
No.
It's something rather beyond ourselves. Is that
exactly? And that's why when I wrote the paper, I didn't say like the civilizing force of religion, because when you start going into religion, you start having that very relatively codified beliefs, relatively codified structures, and so forth. But that is not necessarily have to be there. That our conception of religion is mostly this symbolic openness or encounter with something that is beyond.
Yeah.
With something that is beyond. That is what pushes towards civilization. That symbolic encounter first between ourselves, and then with something that is beyond.
And that is the transcendent vocation.
And that is the transcendent vocation.
Well, that is the transcendent. Why don't you tell us about the vocation? So where does the vocation come into play here? You're saying that there is a certain vocation to transcendence, which can be a civilizing force in the world, right?
So also, like, when this is more speculative for my part, because after all this study, I thought like, okay, these are human beings. At some point, you have to have a person that somehow begins this type of encounters. You have to have somebody. Somebody have to do it. So in the record that we have, it would be very difficult to find the single person. But you can ask the question, so then we never will know. But who is the type of people which are more prone to this type of symbolic thinking, or the type of people that this kind of genius of crafting symbols will emerge from? And then when you go back to the record, the closest thing that you can find, or the more probably probable, is these figures of the shamans of antiquity. These sort of magicians mixed with scientists, mixed with a religious figure, this compendium of person that is capable of somehow looking to in a world behind the world, a world behind the world. That type of figure is the only one that when you look at the record, you can associate is behind this gathering. Behind this gathering. And,
what makes people interested? So, first of all, this religious figure, he's interested in that, or she's interested in that, right? She's interested in this other world, this world that it lies behind the visible one.
Mm-hmm.
But then if that figure had a civilizing force, if that figure was able to gather a community together on the basis of those transcendent ideas, that means there's a general interest among everyone in this world behind our world. And what is it that draws us to that?
Yeah, it definitely, as you said, it needs to correspond. So to the human heart and necessities and way of experiencing reality. Otherwise, even if you got one exponent of that, it would fall empty. So because one thing is like, there must be a person that have the first idea or the first expression of that, but then people follow it because somehow there is something inside of the human person that makes them correspond to that. That makes sense. I also can experience that. So it is an experience that it began in probably these shamans and these seers and all that, but that is not that is an expression of what is in all human hearts, and therefore we follow it. We feel, this makes sense.
I think looking at ancient artifacts is very convincing about the fact that the human being was truly made for God. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. God made us for himself, and there's a journey and a search and all of that stuff that is part of that. It's not like it doesn't come out of the package ready to go, perfect kind of thing, right? There's a long history of that search, many imperfect expressions of that search, but it's rather universal.
It's rather universal. And it's like, in some ways, completely understandable, is that the best thing we kind of know is ourselves. As much as we can know. And therefore, what these first culture do, especially these first shamans and so forth, they kind of look inside, what is the principle of my action? I know it sounds very philosophical, but what is the principle of my action? And you realize that beyond your action, there is desires, there is will, there is intelligence. And so basically, as you kind of project that, into reality. Like, okay, if my principle of action in me is intelligence and will, then there must be an intelligence and will behind the rain.
Yeah, which is actually common sense.
It's common sense.
It's just that it's now, today in our day and age, it seems like it's a very, well, at least in the scientific community, sometimes it can be considered like some kind of fringe belief, but it's just common sense that when you see, like you said, you see your own actions and the intelligence that's embodied in your actions and behavior. And then you take a step back and you conceive of the order of the universe and of the world. And you're like, there's an intelligence that is, animating this, right, in some way.
And I forgot which philosopher complains about that as a way of saying, like, you see, every religion and all that is just projection. And it's fake because it's just human projection. But no. Many things that we have discovered about the world, we discovered because we know how we ourselves function. I mean, like gravity, I realized that if I don't exert force for my hand to be higher, it's gonna drop. So, like, just that same principle, it doesn't make gravity fake. Yeah. The fact that I discovered it through my own embodiment or through my own reality, it doesn't mean that it's fake, because otherwise you will be saying that you somehow are a separate entity, something that doesn't is part of the world. So I'm part of the world. What's happened to me is the world. Therefore, if I discover things in me, I assume that the world also functions like that. So that I forgot who the philosopher is, but it's a bad interpretation.
And what's amazing is that even some of these very maybe atheistic or agnostic thinkers, but if they are anthropologists, if they study human history, there's no way, they have to acknowledge that, one, religion was a key component of human history. pretty much universal, I believe. And then, but also that it's what elevated us to like another level way beyond the animals, right? Like I'm thinking of, I'm blanking on his name right now, the author of Sapiens, you know, whatever his name is, Noah
put it
or
in
something.
Put it in the show notes.
He talks about, in his book that Sapiens, that basically originally Homo sapiens were not at the top of the animal kingdom. That if we had an encounter with animals, Homo sapien and maybe other kinds of mammals and such, we would be the ones running away. They wouldn't run away from us. They weren't afraid of us because, I mean, look at us. We're extremely weak and fragile, and you don't want to get into a fight with an animal. But that once we started collaborating at a large level, we became the dominant species on the planet. We became the most powerful, and to the point where now, of course, every animal generally, tries to avoid us unless there's some specific circumstance where they feel like they have to fight us to survive. And he says that the way that human beings were able to do this is through these kinds of things, what you're describing. Now, he calls them fictions, stories, kind of like just some projection or construction in an imaginary realm that brings people together. But the fact that we are made for that is so fascinating. That we're made for, here we are, in many ways, like every other animal on the earth. We eat and we drink and we sleep and all that, just like other animals. But there's something in us that needs this invisible reality in order to come to our full potential.
Exactly.
Right.
It's inherent to who we are.
It's inherent to who we are. And now I think that, like you gave the example of sports in the beginning, and with all due respect to sports, there's a danger in sports in the sense that that symbol is not adequate, of course, to fulfill that need. And yet for some people, they attempt to fulfill that need by sports or by other symbols, other cultural symbols that are out there. They're okay. I mean, they can get us together in some informal context, but it's not the life or death kind of coming together. It doesn't incorporate the essential mysteries of human life, like love and death and eternal life and all that stuff. It's just a game. You know what I mean? And even countries are powerful symbols too, like America, the American flag, or whichever country, powerful symbols. But even there, it's not sufficient to fulfill that inherent need in the human person.
Exactly, because in fact, when you look at the mythological story, what they try to convey is the logic of the whole, the universe. That we still talk about the universe, but the first thing of the universe, it was understood in some way as cosmos, not just a collection of things, but as cosmos, as orderly collection, logical. That's why in the beginning was the word. We could translate a word, but I think that's a mistake. It's the logos, it's the intelligence behind it all. That is what is at the beginning. It's not a word, a human sound wave. It's the intelligence behind everything. So it is this profound understanding that there is an intelligence behind the constructs of the whole. And therefore, all these mythological stories, most of them, I mean, some of them are about particular things, about getting married or something, but they are always within a framework of a mythology that explains the whole, that gives a logic to the whole. And the human person demands that, or brains, or psychological construction or spirit demands that understanding of the whole, which we don't need biologically. What do I need to know the whole in order to be a biological entity that survives? I don't need it.
Right.
No,
why do you need to know why?
Why do I need to know why? I just need to know how and what. What is that food? How do I kill it? Why I kill it is a completely relevant question in terms of survival and biology. And yet that is the one that we do the most.
Why do I exist? What is the meaning, purpose, and value of my life? These are questions that really, they don't have practical utility. I mean, In fact, there's a popular book by Tim Ferris, The 4-Hour Work Week, and somewhere in there, I read it years ago in the back. He says, if somebody asks you, what is the meaning of life? Just say, that's a stupid question, and just avoid that question. Because, it's
there's
just
no value to it.
It's like, well, that's one way to live. But as you said, the human being demands that. We need that sense of meaning.
Yeah.
Because otherwise we actually fall back into a kind of animal existence, which is deeply unfulfilling for us.
And is dangerous because we know that if there is people that do not find that fulfillment, don't find that meaning, basically stop existing, end their own existence, because there is not a why to sustain them. So somehow beyond our biological functioning, there is a psychological, spiritual functioning that keeps the human person alive. There is a why behind. When you lose that, then you start having psychological issues, and it threatens your life. Interesting, we are threatened, or very life is threatened if that question of what is not somehow answered.
That's true.
Crazy.
Yeah. And often we have cheap substitutes, or I should say we have substitutes or placeholders for that ultimate why. Like if you are struggling to make a living, then you just have that one goal, like, okay, I need to get a good job. And that's kind of your why for right now. And that could be enough, but it won't be enough for long, especially if you attain it. Then you're really in trouble. In other words, if you attain that good job, you attain that success, now you're totally lost, And that's kind of the problem in the first world, is that we don't have the luxury of having basic needs, the fulfillment of basic needs as our why, because we already have that. So what you end up with is people who are kind of anxious and depressed and all that stuff because like, why? What do I do? What do I do with my time? Why do I exist? You're confronted with those essential or like deep questions more.
Exactly. And so that is what I call the transcendental vocation, because transcendence is a difficult topic because transcendent with respect to what you can ask, but in this case we can basically say transcendent with respect to our biological functioning in some way. It's a vocation to go beyond that through these whys, through like what is the meaning of the whole, and so forth, that we have inherently, and that actually propels all the human, or what we properly consider human. We don't consider really human eating. Any animal eats. We consider human a work of art, a monumental building, poetry, contemplation, ideas, communion.
Right.
Most of those things are not necessary for biological survival.
And you know what's interesting? This attempt to explain the whole, I do think that there are secular proposals that are being put out there saying, hey, this is what explains the whole, right? But that don't actually touch on these essential human aspects. Like, for example, we see that in the realm of physics, right? Okay, we understand now the quantum reality, or we don't really, but let's just say we did understand it. Then it's like, this explains everything, right? There's like this, or, I mean, you see that in all these different fields, at least in the scientific world, like, this is what explains everything. Now we get it. We don't need all this religion or mythology to explain the whole, what do you see as the potential challenges and dangers there? And maybe another example that comes to my mind is technology, in the sense that progress of the species, that's also something that's out there, floating out there, if you've noticed. Like, the human species needs to advance to its next stage and next stage and next, and that is what gives us the fulfillment of the whole. That's what brings meaning to existence. What do you see as the potential risks or dangers of that?
The first thing is that it's the same principle used basically, as I would like to call it, sublunar, in the sense of like, it's the same human drive trying to transcend its reality, but by means of its own power and its own technology. It is the transcendence of transhumanism, in which we have the inherent power to basically transcend on our own. We don't need anything else, which philosophically is problematic because, I mean, you got to have the power in order to act, the sufficient power in order to act. So from a philosophical standpoint, it's very strange. You got to have the sufficient potential to get there from the very beginning. But it's a replacement at the end of the transcendental vocation or the transcendental logos and intelligence of the world that religion gave you, and you have superseded it for a inside the world type of transcendent in an evolutionary framework, but an evolutionary framework that does not account for the supernatural. So it's a transcendent that rejects any supernatural elements. We are supposed to move forward, and that move forward, what is it if it's not a certain transcendence? A sense that going beyond what the limits of what we are now.
Sure.
But is one that is close in itself. First of all, assume that a human person have the potential to generate something that is beyond our potential. The question of AI, can we that don't even know exactly how our brains and our consciousness function and emerge. If we play around enough with the code and we play around enough with the software and the equations and all of that, we will be able to generate an artificial intelligence. I mean, real artificial person. Chance is a thing. So maybe, but in principle, unless we have the potential to fully understand ourselves, we cannot create it. Yeah. We cannot create something that is beyond our potential. That is just, a model with whatever wattage cannot give you beyond that. So if you say, yes, you can, you are already assuming that there is some transcendental aspect in the human person.
I see.
You are already assuming. So even though you are negating the supernatural and the transcendent, you are assuming it in your equation, in your very equation. So it's a conflict. This progress that you're talking about is basically what you are basically saying. There is an inherent capacity of the human person to transcend. So it's a religious force without recognizing itself.
I think it's inherent to the human person to, like you were sharing, to like go search for this journey, to begin this journey out of yourself, this transcendental reality. And many times we're searching for meaning, we're searching for value, we're searching for identity. And, the Christian journey or the Catholic journey is that call to respond to that. But also I think the challenge becomes where I think, or even Charles Taylor talks about this, is like, when you open yourself to another reality, it is scary. You're opening yourself to something unknown. And so he calls it like the buffered self, where then we try to look towards ourselves then, instead of looking to the transcendental to find meaning, to find value, and to find identity. And so then we start looking to ourselves. And then that's where I think that I decide, that starts coming in. So I do see like how, that opening yourself into another reality is who we're called to, but at the same time, I think there's an element of like, I'm opening myself to the unknown, which can become scary for a person as well.
Yeah. Very much so. It can be scary.
Exactly.
And it's a good scary.
Yeah, exactly.
But, like with the problem with this, all of these realms of advancement, even though they're very exciting, like, okay, we as a human race are advancing forward in all these different ways, and they're wonderful things and very good. The problem is that I don't think we ever pause to ask ourselves if this fulfills the fundamental search within us. So, for example, if I'm working on a rocket ship, that is going to travel to the next star or something like that, and it's like amazing. And it's like, wow, this is big. Or, from reading history, what a big deal it was when we first landed on the moon. It was like huge for the whole world that we made this big step. And it is. But at any moment in all of these big steps, if we were to pause and say, like, what is our like fundamental need, like as a human person? Well, it's love. It's knowing who we are. It's finding a sense of meaning and purpose in life and all that stuff. And the reality is that these advancements don't actually meet those. So like I could sit there and think like, this is amazing. The human race we're going to become interplanetary and all, and which hey, those are great things. But how does the fact, like if I die knowing, hey, you know what, our children or our grandchildren are going to be able to live on Mars. Like, how does that fulfill the fundamental human quest? It neither fulfills it for me, nor will it fulfill it for them, because they'll just be in the same situation now, but on another planet.
Exactly.
But, and this is where I think like what the Christian message, I mean, who Christ is, like how he meets each individual at the level of the heart and the intellect, the deepest desires and searching of the human person. Like, it's amazing. Like that's the gospel that we share with the world, is that like you personally, where your search and need for transcendence is, like that's where Jesus is eager to meet you.
Exactly.
And where you can truly find the fulfillment. And then your creative energies are employed out of a surplus, out of an abundance, not out of a desperate need to try to find meaning from this world.
Exactly. And as you pointed out, I mean, let's say we get to Mars and we reinstitute slavery over there. Are you now fulfilled? Yeah, exactly. So the physical conditions and the advancement is good, it's wonderful, but it needs to go along with a interior advancement of transcendence of the human person.
Yeah, like there's a moral dimension too, in other words. Yeah,
to it. Right. I'm always struck that what most people consider is the best country in the world and so on, America, we still rule, which I think is by a constitution 200 years ago, and it's nothing better have come up, by the way. It's not I think it's a great tool, but it shows how kind of stuck in time, or we have not developed beyond that. Yeah. Because I haven't seen anything better. So and also in the moral realm, in fact, sometimes we can say that we have go back a little bit in certain areas, not in all areas, but in some certain areas. Like for example, the area of religion. And also something that is very dangerous, as what you guys were putting, is that when the religious impetus doesn't recognize itself as religious and as a quest for meaning, which in some way every human is, and because it's transcended by the very fact, you have to be very humble about it. When that happens, then basically it could become very violent. We have seen it in the wars of religion, and also it could crash you against a wall. Example, the French Revolution, for them, that revolution was the greatest transcendence of we've transcend the king, and then you start shoving people's head.
Right.
So like it can lead you to a place in which now the authentically human is destroyed.
Wow. So if this need for transcendence, this religious search within us, doesn't have religion to hold on to, in a sense, or to provide for it, and it's applied elsewhere, it can actually become fatal.
Fatal, destructive.
Like that's where you end up with tyrannies and like ideologies that kill millions of people and things like that. It's essentially this religious drive, but misapplied. Is that
misapplied? Yeah. Exactly. This religious drive misapplied. And you may say, "Oh, it's not religion because I don't believe in a God, and a mythological God." Yeah, but you believe in an idea that is as spiritual, as immaterial as anything else. So it looks like a God to me.
Right.
It's just that you don't call it that way.
Right.
It's a very relevant point. Just coming back to what both of you guys were saying as well, like this, it's inherent. We've talked about this extensively. Like it's inherent to the human person, the transcendental vocation, the need for transcendence. Why do you think? Like, and in a way, our call is to respond to those questions that come deep within us, which we've already established has been present since ancient civilizations. But why do you guys think that people don't respond to those questions of like, or are they not responding to those questions of why do I exist, or what do what is my purpose in life?
When you say respond to them,
Meaning, like, in a way, it seems like what we're saying is like we're trying to look within instead of looking to the transcendent.
well, looking within, I think looking to the world, to this world,
yeah,
maybe
to the world, yeah.
I think for me, it's like what I think it is like, first of all, you're answering it. There's no way you cannot answer it. It's of life essential. It's like you are answering subconsciously and partially.
Yeah.
Subconsciously and partially. You are, as your father was saying, substituting it for a small T transcendence. Like, the day I get that job, that day I will be happy.
Yeah.
Then you get the job and you just push the limit.
Yes.
Well, the day that now I have kids, I will have. The day of my husband, the day, and then eventually you die.
Mm-hmm.
So that it's just pushing the pole, as opposed to trying to, like, actually what make me happy, what will fulfill me completely. That is one, and the other one is bringing it to subconscious because of entertainment and stuff. Just watch enough movies and entertain yourself enough so that you don't have to ask the question.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of try to avoid to consciously ask the
yourself.
question. Distract yourself. And when you get the question, just give it a very partial answer.
Wow. And is that, why do you think we give a partial answer? Is that, why don't we want to just go on full on following that question?
I think it's despair.
Despair.
Lack of hope. It's a fundamental lack of hope that we actually can get there.
Wow. And honestly, I wouldn't blame anybody for despair, because life can be very discouraging, and if it wasn't for Christ, I think if I didn't know Christ, I probably would despair of, like, is it just positive thinking, wishful thinking, that there really is that sense of meaning that we're searching for, or there really is that complete unconditional love that we're, I think if you thought about it enough, you might end up concluding it's just wishful thinking, but so,
do you mind sharing how you guys see Christ bringing out of that despair and taking us to the transcendence?
I think for me, like, it's nothing in some way that you do. Christ is a fact of history. It's just, we were there in that cyclical despair, kind of the gods and cyclical thing, and suddenly there's this man that either is crazy, is evil, or is God, that says, like, I am actually the one that can bridge you to your fulfillment. And that encounter with that man, the way he presented himself to all, the way he thought, did correspond with our heart. It's a little bit the same principle of the shaman that calls people. The only thing that at this moment is not a shaman like saying, like, hey, let's go toward the stars. It's the shaman saying, I am the star and I'm here, which is a crazy idea. Again, I don't remember who is the philosopher who said it, but it's like either he was...
C.S. Lewis, I guess.
C.S. Lewis,
right? Yeah.
exactly.
He's
C.S.
a
Lewis.
liar, lunatic, or Lord.
Exactly. There's no way. Otherwise, it have to be one of those. Now, when you start exploring him, you can see the logos behind his words, behind a depth there that give meaning to the world. It's like, yeah, okay, if there is a God and I am not, and I'm a creature, but this God called me to himself, evidently we have to have a call to transcendence, but because transcendence is something that I cannot breach, the transcendence needs to be breached from there to here. The gap needs to be breached in the sight of God, and that is what it is, incarnation. Evident, the transcendence, when you put it in religious term, is not us transcending. It's God in some way transcending himself from being the God, the God of the universe and absolute out there, absolute other, breaching that kind of quality of himself and bringing himself down to us. So when we at the end talk about transcendence, it's the transcendence of God. We are limited, but he breaches that and encounters us, so we can actually then experience finally what we were called for. And so that makes sense. That now it's okay. That makes sense that I have this inner urge that I cannot fulfill, but it's because it's made so that some other can fulfill it.
Wow.
I can understand that. Okay, that is, yeah. And then the life becomes waiting, and becomes a space in which, you are given freedom and do things, but knowing that eventually your fulfillment is given to you as a child, as a son, as an inheritance.
And I think like at a social level, Jesus brought into the world that which we were always striving for. Like, as you pointed out, Father Jose, the origins of human community, I guess, or larger communities, people coming together, was around this like quest for meaning, right? I mean, this religious enterprise search, and to build a civilization that is centered around the higher values that we're all striving for, and actually one that is coordinated by love, right? And I think like if you really want the human race to advance from a social point of view, it doesn't come about by technological advancement, right? It doesn't come about by being on another planet or anything like that. The true, genuine advancement of the human race comes about through love, right? When love actually becomes more and more normative, when there's no longer children who are sex slaves and trafficked and, et cetera, then you can say, hey, we're actually advancing, when we're not exploiting and abusing one another to set at least a negative low target, but when we're truly living in communion and we're fulfilled in love, it's like, wow, the human race has advanced. Now, just from a historical and social point of view alone, Jesus' teachings have planted those seeds in the world and that are germinating and transforming the world, and they have been, for 2,000 years. And wherever like Christianity has failed, and it has failed a lot, and nobody really says, hey, Christians failed by following the teachings of Jesus, right? It's just Christians have failed by abandoning the teachings of Jesus. So just from a human sort of point of view, there's something extraordinary about this event in history. It's like changed the course of history. I mean, literally split history in half in terms of AD and BC and all of that. But then there's something beyond that, right? Which is the personal level, that for each human person, Jesus becomes relevant. Like he enters into your inner space where no one else can enter in a communion of love that brings about the kind of fulfillment that no one else and nothing else can bring.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And so that's where I think this need for transcendence is fundamentally met, is, as you said, he transcends himself. He crosses the gap and enters into our world in a way that nobody else can.
Exactly. Different. Incarnation is an interesting thing because it is a historical event in entering the world of the whole, the world of all of us, but it happened in conversion every time. He entered your inner world, right? Which in some ways is more closed off than anything else. So it's I don't know if I have to put it, but it's like a stronger incarnation in the sense of like the power to enter the soul, the inner sanctum of the human person, and there kind of like invite you to meet him in this inner world. One of phrase that I somehow came to me, I don't know from where, is like that I say more and more is like, you should not fear your own world, meaning you should not fear your interiority. Because it is there that you will encounter these questions. And the question will be like a little bit freaky, but it's also where you encounter the answer. If you fear your inner world, then there is no possibility of encounter. Wow. Because the encounter is within there, not so much outside, or at least not now. Maybe in the eschaton we will see Jesus in the cloud, but right now it is in that inner world in which you truly encounter the Lord. That satisfies.
Yeah, beautiful. And just, how do we now, living in this world, this time, this age, where there is a sense of loss of transcendence, and, we could say like maybe that's one of the reasons why we're seeing all these mental health issues and all those things. How do we kind of reclaim transcendence, or is there a reclaiming that we need to do, or what as Christians, in this world?
Coming back to that phrase of you should not feel your own world. The first one that start reducing, I would say, at least is the religious person itself, the church itself. We limit within ourselves the question. Despair, whatever, too intense, too much, I just want to do something else. And then we start coming out with all these exterior rules and all of that supplant the inner encounter. And therefore, when you start talking to somebody else that is not Christian, what they see is basically a construct.
Yeah.
A construct of culture and moral
rules
that at the end is based on fear, so that we don't kill each other. So religion become a source of like, let's believe in this so we don't kill each other.
At best.
At best.
Because sometimes it bemes the means of killing each other too.
So, and there's not that interior, that authentic religious discernment. We fear, and then of course, that person, why would I be this cartoonish thing that is not in contact with reality, is not in contact with its own interiority?
Especially in our time period, people are very sensitive to fakeness.
Exactly.
Inauthenticity.
Yeah. So, again, the failure of Christianity is this inauthenticity. Jesus, instead of becoming that God that you encounter within you that respond to your questions, now become like a founder. You know, like a McDonald's founder, the guy, and you revere him, but it's like as you revealed Simon Bolivar or Washington, it's like a figure that somehow created this construct.
Yeah.
And we do that, and we follow that, and it makes my life in this world comfortable. But that doesn't spread. That is, because I can choose something else. And so it begins there, into us start trying to answer the fundamental human questions face on, really, and don't fear anything. And don't put a sticker. Oh, this is bad. This is that easy. And interesting enough, in the question of religion, it's like we have to accept it. Popes decided that metro rails were evil, and
really,
yeah, there was some, Now, again, because this is
we have to fact check you on it.
No, fact check me. Yeah, no. It is
that
true.
real? Yeah,
it is true.
Interesting.
Now, it's not as simplistic as that. What happened is that, it takes more time to go if you go walking and things like that. And basically, the companies will pack people into these places and you shove them into hard labor and bring them back. And so it was used for exploitation. Yeah. And so it's not that the Pope was not that crazy. It was used for exploitation. But the lack of discernment in terms of recognizing the actual technological advance and separating that from the evil that is occurring.
Sure.
So it's this inclination to just condemn quickly something that I don't understand. And sometimes all technologies, when they begin, they tend not to begin too well.
Yeah.
Because we don't have control over them. The first time that we more or less control atomic power, we drop a bomb. Mm-hmm. But eventually, you can use it for the actual purpose. I don't doubt that the first AI have been used by the military in some covert operation or some kind of something. So we cannot have that fear. We have to really look at the reality and try to answer this reality in front of me, whatever it is. How does it correspond or not to my inner desire, to my inner necessity of transcendence? And then, you will condemn things, but better you will encounter, but that's helped me in this way. We have to have this dialogue. And since the Vatican II, we are talking about this dialogue. But we have cheapened a little bit sometimes what the dialogue means.
Yes.
Like that dialogue with the thing that I'm uncomfortable with. No, we have to probably dialogue more with the things I'm uncomfortable with. Because they may point at certain aspects of that question that I don't have.
It's amazing. Yeah. I mean, like as you're saying it, like many times when we think of searching for transcendence, we think of like, something divine, something, up in the sky. But like, as you're sharing, it's like the more actually we enter into reality of what's in front of us, the divine reveals itself, the invisible reveals itself. And so it's like, because I think transcendence can be intimidating, it can be fearful, but it's actually just engaging more into the reality that's in front of us. Beautiful. Yeah. Father, any thoughts on how we are called to we claim transcendence or our
Yeah,
career?
I mean, I think Father Jose's thesis of the transcendent vocation being a civilizing force continues to be true today, and perhaps today more than ever. It's needed. So if we recognize in ourselves that, hey, I have this transcendent vocation as a disciple of Christ in the world, like I have to play the role of that civilizing force. And maybe the way that we can do that is, first of all, by being very, very authentic. And by that, what I mean is, like, if I'm having a conversation with somebody who doesn't believe, let's say they don't believe in God or they don't believe in the church or whatever, when they're talking about different concerns and questions, I think this, with all due respect to a lot of the apologetic stuff out there, sometimes it can be problematic because it's just like, okay, I can win this debate, right? But that's not real. That's not, I wouldn't say that's true authenticity often, because we fail to recognize the realities that they're representing or the complexities of, what they're representing. And for us to be able to acknowledge that and kind of enter into the questions with humanity, to me, that's the meaning of this dialogue that you were speaking about, right? So it's very easy, in other words, to be polarized, right? And so it says, we represent Christianity, you all represent something else. And it's also easy for us to become, like as Pope Francis would say, a museum. Okay, like we hold these ancient artifacts and, okay, this technology is coming out. It's bad. It's taking people away from blah, blah, blah. Phones are bad. Screens are bad. AI is bad. Everything is bad. And it's like, that's not dialogue. That, in fact, not only will that discredit us today, but it will discredit us for the future too, because when people look back on us, they'll be like, look, this is where Christians were at. They're like, and meanwhile, like the whole world will have moved on. So instead, entering into the dialogue, like with anything, I mean, even with things like AI, to be able to marvel at it, like, hey, this thing is actually amazing. I can't believe we made something like this. Every time I use it, I'm amazed that I can literally ask it a question in human language and it can answer back. Like, to genuinely be amazed at it and to participate in the human experience authentically, and not just with technology, but with other things too, in every area of life, family, love, work, all of that. And from that place to be this, to fulfill this transcendent vocation, what does it mean? What bearing does this have on the ultimate quest of the human heart? And how should that quest and Christ guide all of these things, shape them or illuminate them, and protect them from collapsing into darkness and tyranny and, all idolatry and all of that.
We would never be able to stop the wave, the impetus of the human heart for transcendence. As Christians, we are supposed to guide it, not stop it. We are not supposed to stop in time or anything like that. We are supposed to be guides towards the authentic transcendent at every age, at every moment, every innovation, every new question. We should answer to that and guide it, but not stop it. We will not be able to do so. It's a futile endeavor, and it has been proven futile over and over and over. So our function is to continue to proclaim that, just do that. However, remember, have this goal, the goal of encounter the divine personal God. So how does that have to do with what your new creation? To be and it's what God says also in the Bible, Shema Israel, remember, we are supposed to be the memory of what happened, the memory of our creation, the memory of our incarnation. For the people, so all these inventions and all that actually tend toward the proper final end, and not the contrary. When we are silenced, when we are condemning, when we are constantly opposing, we then become a roadblock, that a very tiny bump because that's what because we believe.
Yeah.
I am and I'm gonna stop the tide.
Yeah.
You are not going to stop any tide.
Yeah.
It's just gonna roll over you, because it is God the one calling. In fact, what you are doing is opposing the will of God, the ultimate will of God for human to arrive to salvation and for human to cooperate with creation. So it's the contrary. So and you believe that I'm with God. No, actually you are against him.
Yeah.
And that's why you will be banished in history. When you are a guy, when you are a pastor, when you are a good shepherd, then it's that we are doing the proper role.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think for Christians, especially in this day and age, I do believe like one of our biggest calls is to reveal the invisible reality behind the visible. And I think, especially I think of, diocesan priests, secular clergy as well. We have a particular vocation in entering the lives of ordinary lives and revealing that invisible reality. So yeah, it's beautiful. Just maybe one last question to end, Father, like for a young person who's asking these questions of like, what's my purpose in life? Why do I exist? What would you tell them to help cultivate this sense of the transcendent vocation, or what would you kind of tell them?
I'm interesting that you use the word cultivate, because that basically it means cult. That's what cult means, from cultivate to basically to generate that as a plant, because as a plant that grows, that you just cultivate, you have to open yourself up to these questions and so on with patience. A plant doesn't grow up from one day to the next, and if you put too much, even if you put too much fertilizer, it may give you tomatoes, but they are not very good. So you have to have the patience of cultivating the relationship through life. Something that I say to young people: the Christian life is a life, meaning it's the whole life. It's not like an answer, a quick mathematical equation. It's a life in which you have to grow in capacity for reception, as well as God give you in His freedom the answers. And that takes time and so forth. So I would say the young person, live your moment. Live the moment in which you are. Live the question that you have in the moment with the greatest intensity your heart can. And then slowly, don't worry about the rest. Not because I say so. Jesus Christ said, worry about today. And the questions of today, the rest will come in time.
Beautiful, beautiful. Father, any final thoughts you would say to a young person to...
I would actually just re-echo the words of Father Jose from earlier. Do not fear your inner world, and specifically, Jesus saying, do not be afraid. It is I am here. That even if we go into the recesses of our being and search for meaning in this crazy world or in our crazy inner world, like the hope that we have is firm, that Christ will meet us there, So the deepest questions about why do I exist and what is my life for, about love, about life, there is, Jesus is actually there as the hope and as the answer and as the light. But unless we have the courage to go there, we're not going to find him there, And so that's what I would say. Do not be afraid of your inner world. I think that's great wisdom to leave us with.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Father Jose, for being with us.
It's a great joy all the time.
I think you should write a book. I really do. But thank you. Thank you, Father.
Thank you.
All righty.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Inspirit podcast. Inspirit is an initiative of Amoris Christi, an apostolate dedicated to lay spiritual formation. For more information and to keep up to date, you can visit our website at amorischristi.org and follow us on social media.